Hello, and welcome back to Here We Are, the Mindful Podcast for Millennials, where it's all about remembering where we've been, knowing where we're going, and taking up space in the present through the art of storytelling. I'm your host, Teka, and I'm here to tie together the practice of presence, some mental health and faith nuggets with our life lessons, tying in some music and humor along the way. I hope that you receive what you need from today's podcast. I hope that we inspire and encourage you to take control of your story and ultimately take control of your life. Again, remember to always check the show notes for links that we reference in our episodes, especially today, because we are referencing some scholarly articles. And so we want to make sure that you all have those as well in terms of our studies that we looked up. You ready? Let's journey. All right, you guys, we are back for, first of all, episode 11, which is part 3 of our Relax, Relate, Release series. And I'm here again with the beautiful Krystle Dorsey, who has been really journeying with me on this strong Black woman study, research, and really just looking at our own stories and experiences when it comes to the strong Black woman stereotype. So this has been really fun. I hope that you have really gotten some things from our first part of this, which was episode 10. And that was talking about the history and the origin of the strong Black woman stereotype. Where did this come from? And how has it been perpetuated, whether it be through music, movies, books, culture, our families, right? All the messages that we get from different areas of our life, both nature and nurture. And then our IG Live, if you haven't heard it yet, please check it out, which was from August 9th. It's all about the internalization of the strong Black woman stereotype and how that affects us, our mental health, our social health, our physical health. What are the consequences of internalizing the strong Black woman stereotype and our own stories, but stories of others who engaged with us. We're really appreciative of that. And so today, when you're listening to this and when this was released, hopefully it's August 15th, which is known as the National Day of Relaxation or National Relaxation Day. We thought what better than to prioritize rest, especially for the Black woman on this episode. And so we're bringing it full circle, you all. We've talked about how Black women, of course, we have been able to reappropriate the label of being a strong Black woman, but we also recognize and want to hold space for the fact that it can also be tiring, exhausting, draining, and really leaves us with little room to take care of ourselves. And so today you have permission. We want to give you permission if you haven't given it to yourself already. So with that being said, I want to make sure I again introduce you all to Krystle Dorsey. She was on episode 5 called Make It Work. And it's, of course, episode 10, which was titled Relax, Relate, Release the Strong Black Woman. And she is here today for episode 11, titled National Relaxation Day. Hi, Krystle. Hey, girl. Hey. And so today, we're bringing it full circle, which I'm really appreciative for because, of course, we can talk about all the ways that the strong Black woman has impacted us. We can share our stories of how we were given messages and maybe even people projected and conditioned us to believe that we had to show up in this stereotype, archetype, schema, however you want to identify it. But now it's almost kind of like, how do we find harmony there? Or where do we prioritize and kind of integrate some rest and relaxation? Because we get it. We have to continue to operate and move in an optimal way, right? We like to make sure that we can perform well and take care of ourselves, our family, our friends, everyone else. But it's okay to also say, I matter too, and to put us at the top of that prioritization list. So that's what today is about. All righty. So, Krystle, do you want to start us off with telling, listeners, watchers, kind of where we are now in this process of exploring the strong Black woman stereotype?
Yeah, so, as my sister friend Teka, we've gone on a really cool journey, and it's something that we really wanted to give just due for you all because we did realize that, there were some historical implications pretty much in racism and sexism and the
Mm-hmm.
intersectionalities of those, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how we have thus used the advantages of those messages to, empower ourselves and build community. However,
Comma.
acquiring, and like we're talking about the internalization of that, like what that
Mm-hmm.
has done for us, especially as modern Black women, right, who
Yeah.
have more access to resources, who,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, this is the podcast for millennials, right? So us millennials, like we're between the ages of what, like 30,
I think it's like
32
25 to
now
50.
to like
Oh, well, yeah,
42
actually.
or something at this point.
Okay.
And so we're right at a place in our lives where I feel like this really comes full circle, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're in our careers, we're becoming family women, potentially, we're becoming partners, mothers,
Mm-hmm.
doing things like acquiring property, being either sole household owners or women's of the home, and so having these responsibilities in our lives and what that looks like on our
Yeah.
level, I feel like is really important for us to really be able to tweak that back as we are
Mm-hmm.
coming to the National Relaxation Day. Because, I know me and Tika talk about it. We's tired. Like,
Okay.
I'm tired.
Listen.
Okay. Like, I got a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
I have a part-time business. I'm a leader in a social justice organization. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
partner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, helping to co-parent. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
a sister, daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gotta fit time in for me
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And that has really been, I'm so thankful for my healing journey in other areas because it has given me and that's what we're talking about today. Like, how can we build in the type of strategies in order to be
Mm-hmm.
able to be present with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
in order to effectively communicate that to others, and
Yeah.
then in some ways build in the habits, practices that allow us to not just take a national day of rest, but to make this a lifestyle.
Yes.
Let's make rest a lifestyle. What a lot of us are calling maybe like the soft life, but that is more so like
Yeah.
luxury
Mm-hmm.
and, giving yourself the things that you deserve. Like, it doesn't always have to be that. It doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be like this extravagant thing. It's really just being
No.
able to say, like, this time of day, I'm going to cut my phone off
Yeah. I'm gonna
and I'm not
unplug,
accessible.
disconnect. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where we really, really are in the journey. Like, how do we make this? We learned about all that history.
Mm-hmm.
We build up self awareness
Mm-hmm.
about what that looks like for us. How do we really make this tangible?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the takeaway? Like, what are we actually supposed to do now? Because me, as you're our mental health professional, practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
wellness practitioner. And in some ways, I see myself that way too, but more so when it comes to like success, careers, and, but particularly for me as a social justice advocate for myself,
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to give people the how.
Yes.
I feel like when
Yes.
we're practitioners and we're educators, we tell people a lot about what they should be doing,
Yeah.
what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
But what people get stuck in, and I know this, when working with my clients, people get really stuck in the how. The how is what keeps people stuck.
Yeah. Mm. That's so true. So we want them to walk away today with some strategies.
Yes.
Leave this episode feeling empowered to practice some, not just relaxation for the sake of, like you said, Krystle, luxury in this soft girl life, soft girl era, but more so to say, this is a part of my lifestyle now. This is a part of my priorities now. Because Krystle, like you shared a lot of different hats that you wear. And so, of course, anyone who may see you from the outside looking in may say, oh, she's balancing all of this well. She got it all together. That may also be the perception maybe some people may have of me with everything going on. But really, it's about us finding harmony because everything is not always going to be perfect and perfectly balanced. Sometimes things do need to be put on a different shelf or a different tier of our priorities. And so we want to empower you all to take some strategies from this, not to say, hey, all of a sudden you no longer have to identify as strong. That's not our goal here. Our goal here really is to say, while you're strong, you can also rest. All right. All right.
Yes.
So
finding that balance, finding that harmony.
yeah.
Because one of the key takeaways and a lot of the research that we've been doing, and just and preparing for today's episode, this other article that I looked at is called "You Have to Show Strength: An Exploration of Gender, Race, and Depression." It's by Tamara, and I'm going to butcher her name because it's French, but I think it's Bubo Lafontant.
Okay.
Lafontant. And one of the quotes that she mentioned was basically, these stereotypes, and there's many of them. So for those of you, who maybe didn't get a chance to listen to episode 10, the Mammy, Sapphire, Jezebel, strong Black woman, whatever these stereotypes are, particularly as it pertains to Black people, served as a function to dehumanize us. Right? To literally take away our humanity, and in some ways make it seem like we can take the max amount of pain. There's a lot of research around that too when it comes to healthcare.
Right.
And a lot of research too when it comes to Black maternal health women, and the disparities there. But these stereotypes have been weaponized in ways to dehumanize, and internalizing that, the longer that we perpetuate and are not able to really be honest about when we do feel the depression, the anxiety, the perfectionism, the imposter syndrome,
all of
that takes away our humanity as well. So that is why self-preservation, and our sister Audre Lorde, our queen mother, one of our queen mothers of our culture, like rest, relaxation, self-preservation, this is an act of resistance.
Yes.
Resistance. When we tell ourselves, when we give ourselves the freedom to rest, when we communicate to others
to rest,
our right to rest, our need to rest, we humanize ourselves. And we have, and I believe, give others the power to see the humanity in themselves as well.
So that vulnerability, it gives others permission to be vulnerable too, because you mentioned it in terms of these stereotypes, these schemas of the Black woman were created to dehumanize. They were used to weaponize not only the Black woman, but the unit of the Black family. And so one of the articles I found too talked about how when it comes to, us reclaiming or trying to find balance now in our modern day experiences as Black women, there is a sense of failing to balance and this false empowerment that comes from whatever it looks like to internalize a strong Black woman stereotype. And the article that I found was really interesting. It's called, hold on. It is called, it's actually a paper, but it's called Stronger, an examination of the effects of the strong Black woman narrative through the lifespan of African American women by Veronique Bailey, which I love that she wrote this and did her studying and her research, because it gave us some more insight into this experience. And so one of the things that she highlighted is called a failing act of balance and false empowerment. According to Watson and Hunter, African-American women who adopt the strong Black woman narrative face the following tensions. A, they have to be psychologically durable, yet not engage in behaviors that preserve psychological durability. B, be equal, yet oppressed. And C, be feminine, yet reject traditional feminine norms. All of this, first of all, those sound like contradictions, right? They leave little space for duality. They leave little space for the gray of life, and they leave little space for women to actually live authentically. And so our hope is to give you these strategies for that benefit as well. And so let's start by talking about What does it mean to free ourselves from the stereotype of the strong Black woman? I said it earlier in the introduction of the episode. Our goal is not to tell you don't have to be strong anymore, but we do think that it's important that you feel free. Okay? Free is subjective to everyone's experience because they are different, but we do want you to experience that. And so one of the first things that I want to hit on, Krystle, is really giving women permission to feel. I think for a very long time, the strong Black woman stereotype takes away the ability, or maybe even minimizes and weaponizes our ability to feel, to emote, to express our emotions and what we're feeling, because it's then seen as weak. It's then seen as, oh, you can't take it, or you're complaining, right? Oh, I'll never forget, I had a therapist one time that said, she challenged me to stop using the word complain. I was like, I don't want to complain. And she was like, I don't understand why you're saying complain when you're really just asking for your needs to be met. And I was like, oh, well, drag me, but also true. And so that's my first strategy I want to tell you all to really practice and think about and reflect on is, am I giving myself permission to feel, right? No matter how people expect you to act or think you should behave, you deserve to have your own feelings. You deserve to be strong, but also have moments of vulnerability and to be supported. That is a need you deserve to have met, is to be supported in your strength and vulnerability. But we got to start by giving ourselves permission to feel in the first place. Because if we don't know what we're feeling, if we may not be able to name it, to identify it, how can we cultivate a coping skill around it? How can we ask for support or for our needs around that feeling and experience to be met? So really it is to say, okay, let me take ownership and give myself permission to feel in the first place. So that's one of the first places to start. When we talk about giving ourselves permission to, this is an act of, Krystle said it earlier when we talk about Audre Lorde and self-preservation and this being an act of resistance. It's also an act of self-compassion. Now, I know that self-care is a buzzword. Listen, everybody, oh, I'm going to get massages. I get manicures, pedicures. I love it for us, right? Self-care and self-compassion, or also known as self-love, are two different things though, right? Self-compassion is defined as viewing oneself with kindness and non-judgment in the midst of suffering, perceived failure, or feelings of inadequacy. And so if you remember from our first part of this series, episode 10, we talked about how the post that inspired all of this was about how Black women sometimes feel like they're failing. And so if we're in that space, feeling like we're failing, judging our actions, our behaviors, our inadequacies, our missings of these milestones, marks, goals, or whatever that are either set by ourselves or set by some unrelenting societal expectations, we then lack self-compassion. And this is coming from an article that's called The Misunderstood Schema of the Strong Black Woman, exploring its mental health consequences and coping responses among African American women. And so, what are the three components of self-compassion? The first is self-kindness, being comforting to oneself in times of pain. I don't know about you, Krystle, but there have been moments in my life where I've experienced physical, emotional pain, and I've literally just kind of almost brushed it off or minimized it, right? And I think that's another internalization of this threshold that they believe Black women have to receive and accept and endure pain, right? They believe that we just have this tolerance that is unhuman, right? But really, we feel pain just like everybody else. Emotional pain, physical pain, and we deserve to say ouch when it hurts, or to actually tell someone, you hurt me. You hurt my feelings. You hurt my body, the literal physical implications of being hurt and what that's like, right? You've hurt maybe my ego, because it happens. Or you've even hurt my idea for our relationship. So expressing pain is, or self-kindness and being comforting to yourself when expressing pain is the first component. The second is common humanity. recognizing that one's suffering is a part of the larger human experience. Krystle mentioned earlier, you all, that these schemas, these stereotypes, they're meant to dehumanize us. Black women, we are not some sort of alien species. I know. Beyonce said it. Unique. Alien superstar. And
That's my favorite song of the album too.
listen.
I
And
pump
that we
that thing
are.
crazy.
Listen, we set the bar, okay? And really we do. We set the bar, and we are also the origin for a lot of people, places, things, ideas, and concepts. However, we are also human. So embracing that as well. Common humanity. And then the third part is mindfulness, which is the foundation and pedagogy of this podcast. Mindfulness, holding one's painful feelings and thoughts in mindful awareness, meaning we are just being aware and accepting of them. We're not judging them. We're not criticizing ourselves for them. And so those are our first two strategies of freeing ourselves from the strong Black woman stereotype, right? First, giving ourselves permission to feel, and within that, practicing self-compassion, which includes self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. All right. What do you think, Krystle?
I think that's so beautiful. I think that's a lovely path, and I can definitely see, in that summary, that's essentially the journey, right, that I took to, one, come into more awareness, first about it, but then to also understand how it's affecting me, and then to also be able to, like we were talking about, to integrate practices of mindfulness, self-compassion, self-care. And if I may, there is this paragraph in the article that I referenced that I really have to read, because it just put it all together of what you just said, of why it's so important, and literally what they study, right? Because there's a lot of, entertainment on social media. Right? Lots of people are being educational too, but lots of people are just saying how they feel and what they think, and it's not based on. But I want you all to know that me and Teka did the fact checking.
Okay,
you know what
research.
I mean? We
peer-reviewed articles.
We're not just
empirical studies.
Yes, empirical studies, journal articles, peer-reviewed journals. And so there is this one line that I was like, oh my goodness, I have to read it, because you guys really have to sit with this thing. And I'm going to do as best as I can to give it its just due. So, like we said, the Gender and Society article, this is what it's saying. It's saying, within the autobiographical literature, so these are the stories of the Black women who were studied, in order to get the empirical basis of the study for this article. Strength is likened to a performance and a facade, rather than an honest reflection of Black women's experiences. Depressed women describe their strength as a masquerade that they come to believe is real, habitually donning our strong woman armor, as you mentioned, Teka, like not being honest and really compassionate about what I feel. So habitually donning our strong Black woman armor belies their exhaustion, frustration, anger, and eventual depressive symptoms. As a performance, being strong encourages Black women to adopt an extensive and potentially self-negating caretaking role to others. As one author asserts regarding her own bouts of depression and those she has witnessed in other accomplished Black women, depression is a selfless end to, quote, lives so filled with doing, we don't notice the growing emptiness inside until it overtakes us.
Whew, okay.
Ooh, yes, we gotta.
Yeah, I had to breathe and sit with
and
that
absorb
for a second.
that, because when I read that thing, I was like, if that didn't just encapsulate all of what we were talking about with you
Yeah.
all.
Almost like we become a shell of ourselves is what I'm hearing.
Right,
Hmm.
right, right.
Woo.
And to the point that you've been saying, especially why it's so important to allow ourselves to feel, to tap into our humanity, to
Yeah.
accept our own humanity. This article also, and it's so wild when you like go back and research and you like, you know, really look into what people have found about
Mm-hmm.
these type of topics, because you realize everything has a name, right? The
Exactly.
things that you feel can't quite put a finger on, you can't quite get it off of your tongue. These things have a name.
Mm-hmm.
And what
Mm-hmm.
this scholar also taught me is there's something called the silencing paradigm
Hmm.
that particularly happens for women, that because we have certain expectations to be
Yeah.
caretakers and our
Yeah.
femininity, similar to what you mentioned earlier, we are taught to basically silence our true thoughts, feelings that do not coincide with the status quo, right?
Okay.
So if it doesn't feel nurturing enough, or if it doesn't feel feminine enough, or if it doesn't feel, and if that's not who we are, we don't admit to it. We
Hmm.
silence it. We don't bring it to light.
Yeah.
Um, and for
Wow.
Black women, what basically she studied is how that plays into the strong Black woman paradigm. That, to your point, like you were describing on that journey, and in some ways, the archetype more so, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
schema of the strong Black woman creates a silencing paradigm for ourselves, so that when we don't feel strong, we're not allowing ourselves to feel it. We're not
Lord,
allowing us
say it.
to admit it to ourselves. We're not allowing ourselves to, like you said, sit with it and
Mm.
really say, like, hey, I am a strong person. I'm resilient, but I really need a vacation.
Yeah.
Or I really need to tell my boss, I'm tapped out on my
Yeah.
capacity right now, and
Yeah.
I can't take on any more projects. Or, I
Maybe I just need
I don't
help.
have it for this particular thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and we just
Wow.
chuck it up and we say we're strong, and we go to that birthday party, and we take on the, extra assignment or the volunteer role, or
Mm-hmm.
and overtakes us, growing emptiness that overtakes us.
Yeah.
We just feel hollow inside.
Yeah. And I think that hollowness, we can liken it to what a lot of people recognize as like an empty cup, right? When we think
Yes.
about taking care of ourselves, we talk about, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so that emptiness, that hollowing, that shell of ourselves is probably because, like you said, Krystle, we are equating, I think we're equating sometimes our value and worth in society with how much we can take on, and what we can do. Like you said, it's a performance. It's not an authentic being. It's more so of a performative doing. And so that silencing means that we are very rarely saying to ourselves, to others, I need help. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm feeling fatigued, burned out. And one of the things that were in the paper by Veronique is she wrote about that. She wrote about the maybe the discomfort, the resistance, or even the silencing of the strong Black woman. And she said that strong Black women find it difficult to talk to others about their feelings, emotions, overload of stress, weaknesses, or need for dependence, for fear of being perceived as something other than strong. Therefore, strong Black women often suppress their feelings or emotions. And as a result, the long term effects of the seemingly positive, strong Black woman narrative and characteristic can consequently be negative to both physical and psychological well being. And so, we've talked about, the implications on our mental health, our physical health. One of the things that can also free us from this silencing is to ask for help. If you need it, say it. Asking for help is a sign of strength and self-awareness. Let me say that again. Asking for help does not make you weak or incompetent. It is actually a sign of strength and self-awareness. There's this misconception that the strong Black woman has to do it all alone. And I think we talked about it in episode 10, the first part of the series, that was something that was conditioned to us, right? Whether it was through the tearing down of the Black family unit, whether it was through the prioritization of us taking care of everybody else and just taking on whatever the world gives to us because this is a sign of strength, of reliance, all of that. But that's not true. You don't have to do it all by yourself. And it's funny because another thing that sparked this series, you all, is a TikTok I had put out where I basically said that. I said, I no longer want to identify as a strong, independent Black woman. I'm tired. Help me. I need you. Give me a hand up or a hand out. I'm fine with asking for help. Right? It is okay for me to say that I want to build something with someone else and not do it all on my own. Right? And I think, when we talk about our personal stories, that is something that I'm sure both Krystle and I can attest to having to even unlearn, doing it all on our own. Right? For a long time, both of us were single Black women who at one point or another were raised in single family households, single meaning one parent. And we were probably conditioned or taught to just do it all on our own.
No, I
And that
was
was us told,
yeah.
yes.
Like,
My
but
mom, listen.
and I didn't get to mention this in the previous episode because, but I explicitly remember my father, of all people, telling me, he said, don't you be waiting around or expecting no man to take care of you. He said, you need to be able and prepared to take care of yourself.
What do you think that did in terms of you walking in? Because remember, one of the things we talked about that I just read is that it says be feminine yet reject traditional feminine norms. So what did that do in terms of you walking in your masculine and or feminine energy?
Oh man, that's such a powerful question. And this is my patriarch, right? Like the man that, but my dad is such a beautiful man. My dad's an Aries too, so they're super independent. They're like, they don't even want to be.
I don't know a lot of Aries men, so that's interesting.
Aries, both men and women, are the leaders. They are the head of the zodiac, and they're just, they'll tell you a lot. They don't necessarily want to do it, but they'll give you that direction. But they typically are strong leaders. They are very strong leaders. Okay. Very headstrong. Very creative. Very fashionable. I don't think I've met an Aries man who didn't, have that. They just have a togetherness about that. Yeah. And in some ways, I learned my professionalism. I learned from my father. My father actually modeled that for me. My dress, I inherited. That's a Dorsey trait that comes down from. So I would say when it comes to that, my dad has also been the primary support of my career aspirations. So it wasn't like a do as I say, not as I do, or like I'm sending you out into the wilderness type thing. And it's also, interestingly enough, I listen to I have this really cool app called Headway. Y'all should check it out. It's basically like 15 to 20 minute summaries of books. Okay. And the one I read yesterday was about how to raise an adult. And it basically explained, like, long story short, baby boomers have done a lot for millennials and Gen Zs, to whereas they've relied on their parents more. So some of that has to deal with anxiety. So anyway, long story short, what I'm trying to say is my parents are actually Gen Xers.
Gen X. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because my parents were teenage parents, right? So they're a little
Mm-hmm.
bit younger. And so I also feel like that's part of the independence, right? Because
They have
I
to
needed
be.
to learn how to be more independent, because the reality is my parents weren't stable when I was growing up. Like, they were trying to come up on their own. So they
They
were
were trying
also
to
teaching me
grow
how to come up on my
themselves.
own.
Yeah.
But my dad, very supportive. So I
Mm-hmm.
could, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel in some ways that I could be led by a man. But I think in some ways that receiving that message taught me that I have to expect it not to be reliable.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, not to expect it. Like, that is, in some ways, maybe a luxury versus something that
It's a
you should
norm.
seek or like expect to receive.
Or deserve.
I hope that makes sense. So it's like, okay, I'm understanding the value of a male leader, but I understand to a certain point I should be prepared to lead myself.
Hmm.
Um and I feel in some ways, like we're saying, there's a harmony there
Yeah.
that I learned from that, because I learned that it's not like I need to be an independent on my own and never ever rely on anybody.
Right.
And so I feel like that might have also maybe protected me from maybe following the leadership of people who I didn't need to follow before I learned what I need in a leader.
Very true. That is
But
true.
yes, but I also feel like there may be things that either I delayed or over time I had to teach myself about what it meant to fall into my, like, what it meant to be led.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like unlearning the belief that being led meant losing your own autonomy and self-reliance.
Yes, the
Because it
balance of
is,
that.
yes, it's
Yeah, and even
okay
now
to
I'm
say
struggling with it, like being
Mhm.
with a partner and like balancing, you know, like the compromise, the give and take, and the support, like the mutual support. But we're really supportive as partners. But I think I had told you before, like, man, when I realized with this inflation and this economy, and I
Listen,
literally could not afford to live by myself anymore.
girl.
That was, I didn't have it. Well, that was a really, I don't, it wasn't an emotional, it wasn't a break. It was it's not catharsis. There's another word for that. Like something when like it really impacts you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, like, that was
Yeah.
really difficult for me to process and surrender to.
Mm.
Because I'm feeling like, okay, so I guess this is what I'm trying to say. I felt like being dependent on somebody should be a choice.
And not a must, not a requirement.
Yes. Like, not a
Okay.
requirement. And like, so if I had to, that makes me weak. That makes me vulnerable.
Mm.
That puts me in, that's dangerous
Mm.
in some ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, not like having to rely on somebody else for your well-being then puts you at a disadvantage. But that's the thing, right, about the strong Black woman. Like, why for us is it taught to be a disadvantage when you need to rely on
Not just rely on somebody we're hardwired for connection and community,
right,
right? We
right,
talk about
right,
this this African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it also takes a village to raise an adult. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so if we are taught to be hyper independent, then
Yes.
that removes us from our birthright of being able to have assistance, help, community in our life. So yeah, thank you for sharing it that way, because I think it brought it to a full circle moment for me when you said that, you're not just you, but a lot of us who may find that being dependent on someone or relying on them without it being a choice or maybe it being a requirement, it provokes anxiety, it provokes stress, it provokes discomfort. And that is probably what also perpetuates the strong Black woman stereotype, and the internalization of it, is because we're trying to avoid that. We
Yeah.
may be trying to avoid that discomfort when really that discomfort is a very short-term consequence or short-term cost of receiving and accepting help and community. But there is a long-term benefit and reward to it, because then you no longer have to burn yourself out, wear yourself down, for the sake of upholding this perception, right?
And
And
that was
so when we
hard.
think, and that was hard,
It
I'm
was like it
sure.
was a morning. I like for 2 to 3 days, I
Yeah,
was just angry. Like we're talking about the topic, I was just angry, and I couldn't
yeah,
figure out. But I was mourning the fact that I felt like for me to be a strong Black woman, or for me in terms
mm-hmm,
of my identity, like
mm-hmm,
it was, and it was scary too for me,
yeah,
right? But there was, and I think that's the part that I was trying to like process. Like there was a mourning for me there, and I had to come into surrender. I talk a lot about surrender. I feel like I say surrender at least every episode that we're working on together.
that's all
But
right.
that was the part that you're talking about, right? And the steps, the strategies, because we don't want to, belabor the point, the negative stuff. We just want to talk about the strategy. The strategy is I had to understand that I was feeling this way based on an unrealistic expectation.
Mm-hmm,
And there were elements outside of my control
hmm,
that were not indicative of my lack of work, my lack of effort, my lack of planning, my lack of worth, my lack of
mm-mm,
strength,
mm-mm,
my lack of whatever. And then to also, and I sat with it, but also, and this is kind of getting a little ahead because we, haven't exactly shared our story specifically, although I am somewhat sharing mine, but
yeah,
I had to realize that other groups do this. This is what they
girl,
do.
it's almost a part of their upbringing.
Every
It's like,
It's
let's
not
go
even
ahead and now
almost.
get you ready. It is.
Every other group is
Yeah.
taught to build community and partnership
Yep.
in
Yep.
order to make their lives easier.
Yep.
And here we are as Black people telling each other, both the men and the women for that matter, that
To just be independent,
you
hyper
got to be
independent.
independent and figure it out on your own. Like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
no. And to be quite honest, it's actually impacting our generational wealth. That's probably a whole other topic we can get
Ooh.
into. But I mean, that's essentially part of my journey too. Like that's what I had to learn. Like it's so much easier to do it. What does Queen Bee? No, not Queen Bee. Actually, Jay-Z said it. What's better than 1 million billionaire?
Two.
Two,
Dos.
two.
Dos billionaires. Mm. So we need to make sure that we remember and hold on to that then. That it is okay to ask for help and be part of a collective. Which brings me to another strategy. we've talked about the reappropriation and how, identifying as a strong Black woman is also sometimes an identity in solidarity. So, like, if you see another woman, shouting her out for the ways that she is resilient and overcoming and showing her strengths, because sometimes, again, two things can be true. It can both be a helpful or positive identity, right? But there's a threshold to that, while it also being dysfunctional. And so one other strategy is called collective coping, right? And I want to read a little bit about what it is. So collective coping involves relying on group-centered activities or social networks to cope with stress. Collective coping and participation in spiritual community have been found to be central coping strategies for African American women. Now, one of the things that I don't know if we've touched on it, but we talked about it a little bit in episode 10 about the Proverbs 31 woman and how, in a lot of times in the faith, the spiritual, religious communities, this perception or this idealistic characteristics of a woman were glamorized, right? And that was about strength, that was about nurturing, that was about working, that was about being a provider in a sense. And so, all of that contributes to the spiritual messages of what it means to be a strong Black woman. And so, of course, when we talk about collective coping and the spiritual side of that, I want to make sure I note or put a pin in here for you all to recognize that it does not mean that you take on any of the harmful messages that come from the spiritual, faith, religious based communities when it comes to what it means to be a woman in general, but especially in the Black faith community, what it means to be a strong Black woman. Because one of the things it says about spiritual coping is that it pertains to the actions that you do. And when we think about religion, faith, it's a practice, right? And so there are things that you can do to help you also cope with this, whether it be praying, whether it be meditating, whether it be, being in community with other, like-minded believers, whatever it is that you believe and subscribe to, or it could just mean reading. It could mean anything that you can implement into your day-to-day functioning that helps you to cope with the stressors that come from internalizing and also unlearning the beliefs that perpetuate the strong Black woman stereotype. So that was another strategy, right? We've touched on quite a few so far, but this one is about collective coping and spiritual coping. And another thing that this article says, this is the one about the misunderstood schema. It says that African American women who internalized the strong Black woman schema perceive spirituality as guiding them to making appropriate decisions and providing them with sustenance needed to overcome adversity. And so instead of feeling like we have to take it on all by ourselves, spirituality also kind of gives us some community because it lets us know that we don't have to make decisions. We don't have to come up with any type of solutions. We don't have to be the only ones that are providing. We can rely on our spiritual practices. And so those are three strategies that I found in this article that are really important: self-compassion, collective coping, and spiritual coping, because they really help to decrease. We're not going to be able to just do away with the strong Black woman stereotype, right? It's something that is probably going to take a lot of time, but it helps to decrease any of the harmful messages and behaviors that come from it. Okay. So really good strategy. And I think another one that maybe both Krystle and I can talk about based on our own experiences and me specifically my line of work is talking to a mental health professional. Now, one of the things I want to emphasize is that not every mental health professional is, what's the word? Culturally responsible.
Culturally
competent, responsible, aware. It is important that they can see, hold space for, and even maybe validate the nuanced experience of being a Black woman. So for example, myself, this is going into my own story. I talked about this in episode 10, but how for a long time, I didn't really recognize that the implications of me identifying, even with even naming it, but me identifying as a strong Black woman were the symptoms of depression, right? And I made it a huge point to identify and get in relationship with a Black female therapist. Now, as a Black female therapist myself, of course, I can talk about, hey, this is really important and you should be doing this. But of course, it takes vulnerability. It takes a sense of safety to be able to talk about your experience. It takes a level of honesty, right? Because now you have to almost kind of start from the top of first letting yourself know that you can open your mouth and share. Okay. That whoever is listening to you on the other end, that they care, whether they are a friend, family member, or a therapist, right? Then you have to let yourself know it is okay for me to let go or put down any of those beliefs, any of those behaviors that have been perpetuating, in some cases also helping, but perpetuating this harmful stereotype or messaging. Like Krystle said earlier, it was uncomfortable for her to say, I now am going to be dependent, or there's an interdependency with myself and my partner. She mourned her previous beliefs and behaviors and lifestyle, right? That takes time too. So having someone who allows you to grieve, who lets you feel seen and heard, that's so important. And so for me, having a therapist, having a psychiatrist, those two things are very important to me. Because without them, I would not even be able to receive any of the support from my ecosystem, my friends, my family, my loved ones, my partner, right? So another strategy, if you have been listening, is especially when we talked about those symptoms of depression and anxiety, is that you don't have to handle them on your own. You can actually go to a therapist, even if you need to go to a psychiatrist, because let's be real. Some of the things that are perpetuating the strong Black woman stereotype are the chemical imbalances that are occurring within our body, whether it's hormonal or whether it's our neurotransmitters. Now, that's another episode when we talk about imbalances in hormones and neurotransmitters. But overall, we just want to say that having a therapist and a psychiatrist is not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign that and I don't like saying this word, but it doesn't mean you're crazy. Okay. It actually means you're aware, like we said before. It means you're aware, it means you have insight, or it means you're ready, you're willing and ready to experience something different. So that's
And a
another
health
strategy.
journey looks
Get you a
different.
therapist.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it looks different for everyone. For
Mm-hmm.
some people, they get them a therapist, and just
Mm-hmm.
like Teka's talking about, like the community, the support, having, a trained professional help you process is sufficient for them. Some people need that coupled with the medication, the antidepressant, the anxieties. Even if we think about some other things that might be, ADHD, like there's so many other
Yes.
things that could be
Trauma.
interwoven with this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even maybe going a little bit down into the weeds, like some people might need group therapy, like having
Mm-hmm.
that communal, because that's another thing, especially for, maybe your listeners, or our listeners rather, that might not be as aware. Like therapy doesn't have to just look like you talking to one person. You could be in a group.
Mm-hmm.
And, from our ancestral community wisdom, like we talked about for as well, like that might actually be helpful
Yeah.
to experience that. That is one of the things that makes AA so powerful,
Yes.
is that,
Community.
having people who have been there to share their stories, and to be supported by one another. And,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't get into substance abuse, which is probably maybe, a component of how you may be trying to cope with some of these things. But
Yeah.
wellness looks different. For some people, it
Yeah.
might be their diet. For some people, it
Yeah.
might be exercising more. Exercise is a natural antidepressant, actually. They have done
Mm-hmm.
studies that
Those
20 minutes
endorphins.
of exercise, you just need 20 minutes. You don't have to do a whole lot. You can literally just walk.
That's it.
has clinically shown improvement within, for some people, as early as a week or two or within a couple months.
Yep.
But that's part of your journey. That's part of a healing journey, is figuring out what works for you. And there's no right or wrong, whether it's diet, exercise, individual therapy, group therapy, coupled with medications, or any combination thereof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being empowered and getting what you need is important, because I learned myself as well. Like, I've sought therapy and multiple different, probably like three. I'm probably on my fourth session. I mean, not fourth session, but fourth season of receiving that
therapy
support. Like Teka has shared, I have found particularly Black women have been more, supportive of where I feel like I am. But in some ways, and Teka might, agree with this, finding the right fit for therapy could be like dating, just like finding the right gynecologist or finding the right, physician. It's the same thing. It's not necessarily going to, but if it doesn't work out the first time, that doesn't necessarily mean it will never work.
Yeah.
But in my journey, I was diagnosed with clinical depression, bipolar disorder at one point. But in seeking the psychiatrist, I was told that I did not need the medication, that my spirituality and my practices with some lifestyle changes. And that's what I did. And I haven't looked back. I found a place that feels good for me. But sometimes you need to re-up. Just like Teka has said before, you might do it for a season.
Yeah.
And you get what you need in that season, and months, a year, years in my case can go by, and you need to touch a base again because you may be at a different stage of your healing journey. So that's the also thing that I want to also like give you guys a nugget in terms of a strategy, that therapy isn't necessarily something that's a one and done.
Oh, no.
And it's not necessarily something that you do and you always have to do it. Like, it's literally, it's a wellness practice.
It is.
Right? It's like something that you can take advantage of, get what you need, go without it for whatever amount of time, and then revisit again.
Yep. And that's okay to need to go back. Yeah. So to review, you all, to kind of get us to wrap up, we've shared quite a bit of strategies. And this is not the exhaustive list of what you can do to free yourself from the strong Black woman stereotype. But on this National Relaxation Day, or National Day of Relaxation, we hope that you do the following, right? First, give yourself permission to feel. Give yourself permission to ask for what you need. Give yourself permission to treat yourself with self-compassion. Then also get around people who support and validate you. Collective coping, being in community with others, having someone to talk to can lessen the burden that comes with being a strong Black woman, right? And then also, if you have a spiritual practice or whether you have some sort of grounding practice, right? No matter what you believe in, find something that helps you to know that you are not alone, that you don't have to go through this world making decisions on your own, that there can be guidance, that there can be support through a higher power that gives meaning and sustenance to your life experience, because it's very nuanced and different for everybody. And then, of course, having a mental health professional or even like a counselor, a therapist, a coach, those are important to have. And if you decide to say, okay, I'm also going to integrate medication into this experience, that is okay too. If you decide to take breaks, right, because you may reach a space where you're empowered to independently manage those stressors, that's okay too. If you decide I need to come back for a little re-up, a little booster, that is okay too. And the last thing I want to make sure we leave you with is that what you say about yourself, you hear first, right? You say it in your mind before you let it come out of your mouth. And so positive self-talk can be really helpful. I'm huge on affirmations. Krystle's been in my space. I have affirmations and just words, scriptures on my bathroom mirror that I see every day. They have not changed since the day I moved into my place because they have been so helpful that I'm like, I ain't gonna recreate a wheel. Of course, I have other ones that I enjoy, but how you speak to yourself really matters. So we want to leave you with those nuggets, with those gems. As Krystle shares on her platform, some gems. And we definitely want you to feel supported in this. We too are still practicing relaxing and giving ourselves permission to rest. Even like my sweatshirt, I don't know if y'all can see it. It says rest. And so that's my own kind of reminder to myself. We're still practicing. So we don't have this down perfectly or to a science, but through research and through practice, through support, we hope that not only we can experience it, but that you guys can also. So thank you all for listening to that. And thank you, Krystle, for collaborating with me on this topic.
I love it. Can I say some really quick resources before we go?
Sure.
I do want to reiterate the community aspect. Like I said, one of the things that I learned through therapy as well, which I think I hadn't really learned about myself, is the power of who you surround yourself by. So also surrounding yourself with people who validate your emotions and allow you to express your humanity and love you authentically are so powerful. And that was a game changer for me. 3 other resources that were so critical, I believe, to helping me, really be able to relax, relate, release are Brene Brown's TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability. I think culturally, I didn't really understand why that was so powerful until I was introduced to Brene Brown's work. So check that out, guys. One of the ways that the Strong Black Woman has impacted me, particularly, especially how it shows up for me, is perfectionism. And I don't think I was willing to really accept that about myself until I read or learned about the Enneagram. And the cliff note of the Enneagram is basically a personality theory that explains how people show up in terms of how they relate to what love looks like for them.
Okay.
Is the cliff note of it. So there's different ways or different outlets that you can go. There's a lot of free stuff. But anyway, the sacred Enneagram broke down what my type is. And I'm a type 1. And type 1 is the idealist, the perfectionist. And when I was able to see that about me in a mirror and sit with it and be mindful with it, like Teka was saying, that was a game changer for me. So that was really powerful. And then lastly, another book is called We Should All Be Millionaires. And this was is by our author, Rachel Rogers. She's a very successful entrepreneur. She does a lot of great work. But what she helped me to understand is that the rich and powerful get help. They hire people to cook for them, to do their laundry, to take care of their kids. And the game changer for me is when she basically broke down that when you get and can hire and can allocate, dedicate, work with, partner, that frees you up to be creative, to flow into your purpose. In essence, to make money. And the way I love it is that she herself is a Black woman, identifies as a woman of color. But what she explained is that this idea we have to do it by ourselves and pick ourselves by our bootstraps, it's a lie. Because the rich and powerful, they hire other people to do stuff for them. That is a ideology to keep the poor poor and the rich rich. So get help, y'all. Ask for help. Hire people if you can.
I'm all for outsourcing. Okay.
Outsource. Okay.
Thank you for those resources, Krystle. We'll definitely, as you all know, drop the studies in the show description. We'll also drop those links to the Brene Brown, not only the TED Talks, but also some of her books that both Krystle and I enjoy, because Brene Brown is my social work hero. I love her. But also the books that she mentioned, the Sacred Enneagram, as well as We Should All Be Millionaires, because and we do. All right, you all. So we're going to move into our next segment, which is it's all about expressing gratitude. It's an acronym that stands for our gratitude or goal, which is our G, intention, which is I, faith or focus, which is our F, and take action, which is T. And so in practicing a gift, this brings us to the present moment because gratitude, it shifts your perspective. It really does. And it helps you to see where you are, what you want, and what you have. And so my gratitude today is for my community. We talked about collective healing. We talked about collective support, collective coping. And so I don't think I would have been able to even begin to unlearn any of the strong Black women internalizations that I have without my community, without my partner, without my friends, without my family, the people who make up my village. My intention for sure is to give myself permission, like we mentioned earlier. There's a lot of times where we may believe that we have to do something in order to be worthy or valued, but really you can give yourself permission to rest. And so my F, my faith, is to really tap into my faith and spiritual practices that really give me sustenance outside of all the rest that the world gives us, because I think that society, although it has its positives, can sometimes be draining. And my spiritual practices can refill that cup that we talked about. And then, of course, my take action is to take a day off. Okay. Hopefully soon I can take a day off because the girl works 6 days a week, basically 7. And so I really hope to take a day off soon. That's my gift. What about you, Krystle?
My gift, my G for gratitude is my community as well, but also specifically the things that I have been exposed to as a result of the people that have been into my life, right? A lot of the books that I just referred you to, one of the first, I would say, things that helped me even to come into awareness about the strong Black woman stereotype was a Black studies course that I took for free at the employer, one of the employers that I work for, higher ed institution. It was taught by a beautiful Black woman. It was called the Africana Woman. And that is when I first learned that these were stereotypes that we were carrying. So just really valuing how your community is a part of your healing journey, right? And the things that your community is exposing you to while you walk on that journey.
I love that.
My intention is to rest intentionally.
Intentionally, I like that. Yes.
Intentionally building in rest into my practice, into my daily life. I think especially, these past couple months with me revving up my marketing and stuff like that, I haven't really been reading as much, as I wanted to, or just doing things throughout my day that give me joy. And so I'm going to be intentional about that. My focus and my faith is that I'm on a journey.
Yeah.
And to be present with that.
Yeah.
Be present with that. And my take action is October is a free month. We didn't talk about this before, but like in April, that was a me month. April was where I didn't do any social activities. I made April about whatever I wanted to do is for me. April's for me. And so I'm actually taking one of those in October and I'm looking forward to it. So that is my take action.
Yes, I love that. Thank you, Krystle, for sharing your gift with us in both aspects. All right, you all, our last segment called Vibe Tunes ATM. This is where we integrate music into our fun that we have on this podcast and into our mindfulness. Music really helps me to tap into some emotions and express them. in a way that maybe I don't have words for at the time. And so today, Vibe Tunes at the moment, as always, doesn't have to be related to the topic, but it can just be whatever is on our spirit, whatever it's happening to, whatever feels good. So I would love for each of us to share, let's say, one song that we've just been really loving right now. And for me, my most recent vibe tune is called Sweet Tea by Snow Allegra. It's one of her new singles, and I'm loving this vibe she's on. Yes, girl.
You know, I love me some Snow.
Listen,
I didn't realize Snow had dropped a single. I'm about to go research
I
that.
think this is her second one that she's dropped recently, because the other one is called, don't get me to lying. I don't know. The other one is on my playlist too, but Sweet Tea is basically a love story. And it reminds me of me and my partner, honestly, talking about November. November's when my birthday is. Talking about falling in love during the summer. Sweet Tea. My name starts with a T. Just a whole bunch of innuendos that really kind of resonated with my experience of being in partnership, of unlearning to this hyper independence, of feeling safe to rely on someone. And so Sweet Tea by Snow Allegra is my song. What's your song? Krystle, your vibe tune, ATM.
I love that Joy song. That song, All That's Just Trending. The Voices of Fire.
Yes.
The featuring Pharrell. I just love the way it sounds.
Me
and
too.
I feel it really embodies like just finding that joy. But when I think about, you know, our journey and our topics and our podcast too, Feeling Good by Nina Simone, the Black woman version. Because for
emphasis
us,
on Black.
by us, man, Feeling Good is such a classic.
Okay.
Yeah.
We love to see it. Well, thank you. So we got Sweet Tea, Joy, and Feeling Good. Oh, those all feel like warm and fuzzy vibes. So, of course, they'll be on the playlist on YouTube, you all. I'm working on getting them on Apple Music and Spotify. Bear with me because it's a lot. We thank you so much. Thank you, Krystle, for being here again. And thank you all for watching and or listening to Here We Are, the Mindful Podcast for Millennials. Let's connect. Hit us up on Facebook at Here We Are Podcast with Teka, as well as on YouTube at Here We Are Pod, and on Instagram, the Here We Are Pod. Make sure that if you have a story to share or you want to give us your experience of being a strong Black woman, you email us at theherewearepod@gmail.com. It is National Day of Relaxation. Give yourself permission to rest. And breathe in the now, sis. You deserve it. You're worthy of it. Take care.